Alright guys, Conquering Mountains, it's here today. Man, I am excited, got a little bit of nervous energy. I'm going to be honest with you, but you know what, today is going to be an amazing day. So we're getting ready to interview Joe and Jennifer Mackey. You need to sit back, buckle yourselves in. It's going to be a ride, it's going to be amazing. These guys are going to share some tips and some tools and some truths, and your life is going to be changed and transformed just by hearing it. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy the next little bit as we talk to Joe and Jenn Mackey. All right. So again, we have with us today Joe and Jennifer Mackey. I am Rusty. I am the co-host of Conquering Mountains, and we got JD Redmond, who is the other co-host. So if you are first time tuning in to Conquering Mountains, we have two of the most amazing people. So I was talking about you guys on Instagram, and I just want to follow up because most people maybe didn't see it or hear it. But Joe and Jenn, I met Joe when I worked at the jail, and I was actually got to sit in on his interview when he was interviewing for RHA. And even though in that moment when we were interviewing, it was a phone interview, I connected with Joe because of I could just tell his spirit, and I was fortunate to sit in on the interview because it really had very little to do with my job description or title, but they, for whatever reason, wanted me to sit in, and I got an opportunity, and I was like, man, this guy needs to do this because he needs to bring a positive influence to, and at the time we were working in the jail, and he was working with people with substance abuse. And so I knew that he would be able to influence those people in that moment. So since that time, and the thing that when I first thought about interviewing Joe and Jenn was these two have broken the model. And what I mean by that is that generally, whenever you go into business for yourself, you're an entrepreneur, the chances of success are about 10%. Because most businesses fail within the first 3 to 5 years. Joe and Jenn not only started a business from scratch, Jenn, they were able to within the first year, correct me if I'm wrong on this, in the first year, Jenn was able to quit her job and go home and start in the business. And then within a year and a half, maybe less than 24 months, Joe replaced his income. And so not only did they succeed in that, but they also were able to grow a business that is just now, they've been in the Bahamas. They have been featured on television as being photographers. So they have done an incredible job at succeeding in a place, especially in Asheville, where photographers there's a lot, and they've been able to
there's 9 million of them.
9 million. 9 million. So you guys would be able to create a niche and be able to, like I looked, and you guys you were #1 in North Carolina, which is astounding to think about that. So Joe, Jenn, I give you guys the floor to talk about you and where you guys come from.
So I'll let Jenny start us off because she's the native photographer. I never actually, I think I was like everybody else in the world. I grew up like appreciating a good photo, but I knew nothing about it. And then along came Jenn. So
I guess I was an artist my whole life. I mainly do the drawing and painting, and I didn't know what to do with myself when I went to college. So I decided I'll major in something I love, which was art. And during art school, they made you like specialize in other things other than what you love, which is drawing, painting. So they said I picked photography. And back in college, we did film photography. So I did a lot of black and white film and stuff like that. And that's where my interest started in photography. And then after I got my bachelor's degree, I was like, I don't know what to do with my degree now. There's not much you can do with an art degree. So I became a high school teacher. I taught art and photography for 6 years to high school kids. And my last 2 years were online teaching photography. And I got my master's in art education. But how it came to be a business was my cousin needed a wedding photographer, and she asked me to do it. And I was like, I've never shot a wedding in my life, but I will try. And please don't kill me if I do a bad job. And she was fine with that. So that's how it started. I just did that wedding, and I loved it. And I was like, this is fun. I actually think I could do this as like a part-time thing while I'm teaching. And then I started doing it, and Joe was kind of afraid to let me go alone in Florida, because this was in Florida. He's kind of afraid for me to go places without having him there, just in case some weirdo was there. So
all kinds of news stories in Florida about
gotta
like
love it.
people getting hired, and then like they show up and nobody's there, and then they get mugged or something. So anyway.
So he came along, and then I finally asked him, "Can you just help me one day?" And like, I gave him a camera, I put it on auto. I said, just shoot people laughing, having a good time. He's like, I can do that. And he ended up loving it. And he's like, I want to learn how to do this. Like, I want to understand photography. So that's how we started, and we ended up loving it together. So
yeah, and then so it became in Florida, like the term I think they use nowadays is our side hustle. And because we both had careers and we're doing fine in life, but we kept doing it more and more, and we got busier and busier. And
well, I got laid off from teaching.
Eventually, Jenny got laid off from teaching,
and that kind of put me in a weird spot of what do I want to do with my life.
And we were shifting towards doing that more anyway. So since she was a contract employee, she had 3 months of pay still coming, and it gave us an opportunity. We had always loved Asheville. We had traveled here 3 or 4 times a year to go mountain biking on vacation. And so we were always like, we'll retire in Asheville one day. And I'm glad we didn't wait.
Yeah. We were like, one day.
There's like nothing left. But yeah, we got up here, and we just made that jump. We were like, you know what? Let's rent our house. Let's tackle photography. Let's see if we can do this full time. Let's give it a year. And tried to leave no stone unturned in terms of opportunities and things to learn and just getting better. So once we got up here, we
both had jobs.
Both had jobs for at least a year, and then we thrived in this market. Like we did well, and so we had goals like we were talking about on the Instagram Live, and we set goals, and I think always in the back of our mind, there's always like that. Oh, hopefully this works, but like we really committed to it. And before you know, like our goal that first year was 25 weddings, and we did 52 or 53, I forget now. But we were like, that proved to us. We were like, oh my God,
we can do this.
We can really do this. So,
I guess I don't want to get too far in depth.
Yeah. So that's sort of our intro in a nutshell. So now we're 4 years in, and we own 2 photography companies. So it's us. We have our brand, and then we have a team of photographers of 7 people. And so when we're not available, which is quite often, we're able to get people to book our team, and then we still edit the photos, and we're able to serve more people that way. So in a nutshell.
Very cool. Where did your relationship with Rusty begin? I know he said he met you, he said in the jail.
Not that way, right? So my last career, I was in the counseling field, and specifically, I was a substance abuse counselor. So, and I got into that field in a weird roundabout way. I was an exercise science major in college, so I was personal training for about 8 years after school. And after I ran into one of my clients. She was the COO of a behavioral health organization, and she's like, you would be perfect for our field. Like, you got good energy, and you're kind of what we need. We need people that are younger to come in and really get people motivated to change. And so I got into the field that way and just stayed there for about another 8 years in that field. And then, so when I moved to North Carolina, you don't just move here and get a business. Like, it took time. So I was blessed to get a job opportunity with an organization you mentioned called RHA, and that was in the jail. So that was a new kind of environment to be in, which was actually pretty cool, believe it or not. And then so we worked side by side. Rusty did classification, if I remember correctly. So he would kind of, disseminate like all the information we needed to, make good decisions for about who we're going to work with and why, and that thing. So.
Very neat. Well, thank you for sharing your personal stories. And Rusty, do you want to share what it was that drew you to the Mackeys?
Sure. So there's a lot. So we're trying to right. And I'm glad that Jen joined, because I think one of the things that people probably may miss about Jen is because, like, Jen was involved in an accident years ago. And I'm curious, like, 'cause one of the things about this is like overcoming fears, right? Overcoming obstacles. And so as my wife, about 20 years ago, came up with this saying, and it was just beautiful because we've applied it to our lives, is removing the obstacles that prevent the possibilities. And so Joe and I and Jen, we've met some people that they know that are, let's just say, like, very into the Jim Rohn, the Tony Robbins, and they are filling themselves up with all of this information and yet are stagnant. Like, if you have a conversation with them for 2 hours, they will tell you all about the incredible things that life has the potential of doing. But the thing that I have really been drawn to about Joe and Jen is that they can talk about those things and they can live those things. So that's what has caused in me to go, okay, these people are the kind of people that I want to like be around, because they ignite a fire. And so that's why when we're doing that biography part, it's like, what fears, like, you guys moved to Asheville. Sure, you moved to Asheville, and you moved here not really having a base of a safety net, if you will. So there had to be some fears that you guys, what fears did you have when you go, because you didn't sell your house right away. Is that correct?
No.
So
yeah, we had it for a
house
year.
is still there unsold, so you're having to make a house payment and you're moving up here. So it's like, most people never move more than 10 miles away from their home.
Wow.
You guys moved hundreds of miles away from home. So what fears did you guys have in that initial process of going from Tampa to Asheville? What fears?
For me, it was leaving my family, my friends, and knowing everything we know, and not having them to fall back on necessarily because they're so far away. It's not like, hey, I screwed up, can I come live with you, kind of thing. But I guess that was a fear of mine, and not maybe having enough money to stay afloat when we moved here, especially renting a house in Florida. Like, we rented our house in Florida, thank God, to somebody. But what if those people didn't stay there, and then we'd have to pay a mortgage and rent? And then it was like, I don't know, we ain't going to be able to afford that. So that was my fears.
Yeah, I think it was funny because before we made the jump to move to Asheville, I was more of and Rusty will have a hard time believing this, but I was more of like the negative Nancy at a certain point. I was kind of like, no, we can't just up and move. We got jobs, we got family, people don't do that. And
at one point I was ready to move. Like, I had gotten a job up here and everything. I was ready to go. And then Joe's like, I'm not going. You can go by yourself. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to end our marriage. Like, I'm like, this is not going to work.
Yeah. And so we, full disclosure, I had hung out with a friend of mine, old friend back, 4 years ago now, 4.5 years ago. And I just spent the day with him at the beach. And, he had kind of given me a talk about, he's like, what are you afraid of? Kind of the same questions. And I'm like, well, you're leaving this behind. He's like, well, what are you leaving behind? I'm like, well, it's like, I got a job. He's like, are you happy at that job? I'm like, not really. And, all these things that I would do in the counseling world with people, he kind of did to me. And it kind of opened my eyes. And I kid you not, by the end of the day, just those questions and having to answer them completely shifted my mindset. And I got home, and Jenny got home from her part-time job at the time. And I'm like packing up, and she's like, whoa, what's going on? And We're like, we're going to Asheville. Like, what? And so I was like, I'm going to put in my 30 days notice on Monday and we're going to do this. And so once I got to that point, I'll be honest, I really didn't have like a doubt or a fear in my mind. Like I just shifted my belief system. I was like, there's nothing holding me back except me. And so it's not to say that little things didn't pop up along the way where we were like, crap, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
But it was kind of a unwavering mindset that the universe is going to provide for us, or we're going to figure it out no matter what. So I think our worst case scenario was like, you know what? Let's say we fall flat on our butts. Our parents aren't going to let us be homeless, so
we'll move back to Florida.
Move back to Florida. What do we got to do?
Live with our parents in our 30s. Sound like a plan.
Yeah. So.
How important was it to know that each other was, you know, part of this process for you, where, you know, when you got home or you had an issue or there were some fears, that you could count on each other?
I think it was super important because he understood exactly what I was probably feeling and going through. And I mean, it's also hard because being married and stuff, like you bring that stress all the time home to the table, to where you're constantly maybe at each other's throats because you're stressed or you're scared or you're, you know, anxious. But it's nice to have someone to talk through it and actually understands, versus going through it alone would be totally different. Because you could talk to somebody like, you know, a friend or a parent, but they don't understand the process that you're doing and your goals. And, you know, they would just tell you to stop. They say quit. If you're anxious or if you're upset or you're kind of questioning it, why don't you just quit and go do something safe? And that's what probably my mom would say. Oh, yeah. So she wanted me to be a teacher again. I said no.
And I think both of us sharing that experience helped too, also because, you know, whether it was husband and wife or two friends or two work partners, like two people looking at the same situation are going to have different sort of ways on how to figure it out. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, Jenny and I,
different perspectives.
Yeah, Jenny and I both bring different strengths to the table. So a lot of times when she was like, man, I don't think this is realistic, I don't know if
Joe was like,
work,
it's going to work.
I would figure out, hey, this is why it's going to work, and I'm going to show you how. And then there's been times where I'm like, ooh, I don't know if we can do this because of X, Y, Z. And then she would figure it out and be like, no, it's okay. Look, this is why this is going to work. And so that's been cool. We've been able to reassure each other along the way, which is nice.
It seems I can connect with what you said, Joe, because if you were a positive person all the time and like, yeah, it's always going to work, that's a different mentality than like me, where I have some fears. I'm not so sure. I kind of have some self-doubt. Somehow you work through that self-doubt, it not only to move, but in a very short period of time. It was within 12 hours. Somehow you took the information and you thought of the answers that you were giving to your friend on the beach, and you came up with a decision that you're moving forward. Did that process that you discovered at that particular time, is that something now that you do on a regular basis to get through a situation where you have concerns?
Yeah, I would say it doesn't necessarily feel the same. Like that weekend, that day in particular, it was like a rush, you know, like my mind changed. So it was like my thought process started changing. So it was kind of like a weird, stimulating like feeling of an aha moment. So I'll be honest, for the next 2 months, I was kind of just high on life. Like the world looked different. Now that's become the norm. So it's more of just a practice. And, you know, I go through most days positive, but I'm not like 100% all the time. So, or like turned up to 10 necessarily, like I was for 2 months. And then, you know, you get to a point where you sort of normalize and that becomes your new normal. So, I have daily like sort of practices or rituals, as Tony Robbins calls them, where like, you know, first thing I do in the morning is start off with something positive. Could be, you know, like spoken prayer, could be like, you know, a Jim Rohn video, could be anything, at least 10 minutes. And then usually I'll go to the gym and kind of get physically going, and then I kind of start my process for the day. So it's become more regimented. When I first started, it was kind of like just, all over the place, if that makes sense.
It sounds like you're being intentional. Can you share?
Yeah.
Can you share why do you go through those steps? What are the importance and what are you trying to gain out of those steps that you just shared?
Sure.
I'd love to hear from both of you if they're both the same or if they're both different.
So I'll let you talk about what your morning routine is. You have a morning routine.
Actually, it's funny. We are, even though we're like, on the same wavelength with everything, in some sense, we're different people. So we have different ways of doing it, I guess, to create like that morning, like go get it. I usually get up way earlier than Joe. He sleeps till like noon.
No, I don't.
No, but he stays up a lot later than me. But I wake up and my first thing I do usually is go to the gym. Like, it just puts me in the right mindset for the day. It gives me energy. It gives me that time to clear my mind and just go for it. And it gives me the energy to go ahead and start doing things for the day. And I don't wake up and listen to anything like Joe does. He usually listens to like a positive, podcast or a video. But I do it differently in that sense. I just start with something positive for me and my well-being, and for physical and mental. And then I start, it gives me a lot of motivation to start the day and get to it. But Joe, what do you do?
Yeah, so with my routine, I just consider it, you guys are probably familiar with this concept of priming. And so it primes my mood and my thought process. And so that's why I do that every day, because it gets me, I think gratitude is one of the biggest things. I feel like starting the day off with a sense of gratitude or focusing on the positive is something that kind of shapes the rest of the day for me. So
especially right now.
Yeah, especially right now, these days. So that's why I like to do that. And I guess I fully bought into that process because, just like exercise, right? It's an easy concept to talk about. You can start off hardcore for 2 or 3 months, but then you fall off, right? A lot of people do. They lose 30 pounds and they gain 31 back. There's a process there. Like, all right, I'm going to warm up. I'm going to stretch. I'm going to, get loosened up, do a warm up set, and then I'm going to progress. And so I feel like my day is like that. I wouldn't just roll out of bed, throw on nice clothes, and head to a client meeting. I want to prepare myself so that when I walk into the room with that, new potential client, like, I'm 100%, I'm ready to rock and roll. And so I believe all of those little things we do sets us up to be the best we can be for what we do.
I think that's fantastic. Rusty, I'd like to ask you if you want to say something about this, because what I'm discovering, it's they're living their day with purpose and intention. They're starting their morning out to create the type of day that they want. And it sounds like that it's become more and more important, and they realize that if I want a particular type of day, I have the control over that. Do you want to talk about that at all, Rusty, or have any questions for them?
Well, I want to go back to something Jen had said earlier, because her mom told her she wanted her to go back to teaching. And I'm like, I think there are people in our lives who their intentions are always good for us and they love us. But they may not always realize what our dreams and our goals are. And and I imagine that Jen, so just talk about for a second, because I think it kind of speaks to the purpose and the intention of like your lives, is because your mom's telling you, hey, you need to go do this. And I'm sure that was probably, well, you tell me, like in that moment, I would think that if your mom is telling you, hey, you need to do this, you feel a draw to go, okay. And, and then the draw to your dream, which is giving you guys financial freedom and giving you independent success. Had you followed the path that the people who love you wanted for you, you wouldn't have what you have today. You would have something different. So how were you able to, in the moment when somebody says, hey, this is what you should do, and you love them, and you go, I'm still going to follow my path. How did you do that?
It was hard because honestly, like, I used to be codependent with my mother. And I would do pretty much anything she said because she's my mom. And I went through a bout of, and this kind of deals with this, but I was anorexic and bulimic in my early 20s, and I went through treatment, and that's when I finally found out my mom and I were codependent on each other. So it taught me to be more independent, and do what I want, what's good for me, like starting to look at me and what's good for me. And I know they told me to kind of be aware of that. So throughout, my earlier, like my mid-20s, I started becoming more aware of that. But whenever I decided that I wanted to move we both decided we wanted to move to Asheville, and I wanted to pursue what I want to do. And teaching, I had gotten burnt out. After I got laid off, I was really I was over it. I didn't want to do it anymore. I did it for 6 years. It just wasn't worth it for me. I wasn't passionate about it really anymore. But my mom's like, that's the safe thing to do. Like you're giving up a steady income. You're giving up all that education you paid for. And I was just like, but Mom, I was miserable. And no amount of money is worth to be miserable to me. So like I had to work through it did give me second thoughts. Like, am I being so stupid right now by just going to, I was 30 at the time, I think, or close to it, 30. No, I was 32. Like going to a whole new place, starting a whole new life, nobody around us to support us, and doing something I really want to do, even though like all the odds are against us. And I just had to tell my mom, no, like this is for me. And if I screw up, it's okay. Like you don't have to save me. I'll save myself. Like, but it gave me that more motivation to even do better, because I wanted to prove to my mom that I don't have to do what's safe, and that I can do what I want to do and make it happen, and make it to where like now she's so proud of us. Like she totally always tells us like, I can't believe how successful you guys are. So if I wouldn't have done that, I mean, we never would have done this. Like we would have just probably still be in Florida, living our day-to-day life, going to 9-to-5 jobs. So, yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with it.
No, it's just that wasn't where my heart was.
Yeah.
My heart, I wanted to. It's the thing, I guess they say millennials, or even though we're at the cusp of millennials, we want to have a job that we love. And I know a lot of people struggle with that because they're like, there's no such thing. But that's something, one of our goals, I think both of us wanted something that we're passionate about and we love, that we can work and make money doing it, but it's more about being happy.
I want to be respectful of everyone's time. Do you guys have a few more minutes you'd like we can spend together? Okay, fantastic. Rusty, thanks for bringing that up. I also like to tie in where the faith tied in to the education, because you took the steps from going from your school and you were educated, but you were also had this passion for art. And then Joe remembers, I can snap some pictures. So you took those little pieces and you built. So you didn't all of a sudden just have a business with 2 photography businesses and facilitating weddings for 7 other photographers. There's a process that you went through in those steps. And so I don't think you would make it through those steps without faith. So can you share with us how that your faith and what you were doing helped you move from step to step to become, where you are now? Does that make sense? Did I ask that? Does that make sense?
So.
No, that makes sense.
Yeah, we had sort of talked about that, I mean, Jenny and I are both believers, we're both Christians. And so, we always had a faith in God. I would say it was definitely tested a lot more when we finally took this journey, because you really there's no safe net anymore, right? We don't wake up and go to our 9-to-5s and guaranteed paycheck every 2 weeks. So we had to have a lot more faith, I think, for this process. And I think everything we were going through at that time sort of just culminated to just make that process happen. So, just all the books I was reading, all the steps we were taking together. And then, we've had bumps in the road along the way, just like anybody, right? Like you have this plan to go from here to here in a straight line, but really that journey we've all seen, it's not a straight line. It's all over the place until you get there. And one thing that was cool and I think eye-opening for us, some people might think it's cheesy, but every time we ran into a major hurdle that we were, we were positive, we were focused, we were, how are we going to get past this? But every time we hit a major hurdle where we didn't necessarily have the exact answer of what we were going to do, something happened out of nowhere that got us past it.
And we prayed about it, and
Yeah.
then it would within the next week something would happen. And you're like, I guess this is God telling us we're in the right where we need to be. And it's just amazing. Like, it's happened multiple times. We're like, you know what? I feel like this is God's purpose for us. And it's just amazing. Like, it's not, like you said, it's not perfect. Sometimes some things don't make sense that happen, and you're like, oh my gosh, like, how are we gonna get through this? But waking up every morning and trying to start with the positive mindset and having faith that this is part of the journey that God had for us, and it makes us stronger as a person and as a business. So it's definitely helped.
Yeah, like when we moved up here, we had, all right, we got the mindset, we got the energy. Now what? And Jenny was talking to an old coworker in Florida, and we were trying to figure it out. We were honestly just going to get up here and just figure it out, like find a place. We didn't have a place to stay. And she was a little stressed one day, and one of her coworkers were talking to her about it. An elderly lady you used to work with named Sandy. How old's Sandy now? Probably like in her 70s, 80s?
60s.
60s?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And so,
Sorry, Sandy.
what are the odds? Sandy, where we were moving, she goes, oh, I have a house up there. You guys can rent free for like 30 days or, just
2 or 3 months till you get your feet wet.
just pay the electricity. We were
We're
like,
like, oh,
what?
okay.
And so we did that. We took advantage of that. And then, we found renters. We found an apartment. We got jobs. And then, there was this weird sort of gray area period where the first payment your renters make don't cover your mortgage for some reason. And then we had to pay deposits, first rent up front, all these things at once. It was like, how are we going to do this? And, we were up here, this is 2 months in. We had no presence up here. We had no marketing. We had nothing like that. And suddenly this big job came through, like almost out of nowhere. And it was like, boom. And then that covered all of our fears for like that moment in time. And so, I would say it probably happens a couple times a year where something happens, and how are we going to figure it out?
Even this
Can't
month.
explain it, yeah.
Yeah, it's happened this month. Where
Yeah.
we're like, God's taking care of us. As long as we keep believing, we keep pushing. It's not like, though, we just give all of our faith and hope things happen. Like, we take those action steps and know that it's not just God's going to do this for us, but we have to do the work ourselves too.
Yeah.
And He will provide for us. So that's kind of our mindset too.
I guess to end on that, there's a quote I like. You guys have all heard of Ray Lewis, right? So he all-pro linebacker, all that stuff. I know he's got the reputation from years ago, but like, he actually does a lot of positive in the community now. He's a motivational speaker, and he goes to prisons to talk to people. He goes to a lot of different places. And so he did this commencement speech at a prison graduation one time that I thought was really impactful. There was a quote. He said, when people were talking about, faith and praying and this and that, he said, don't look for no light to come out the sky. We are the sky. And so I believe it's kind of our duty to sort of embody that and live that. It's not just, hey, God, can you do this for me? It's like, all right, I need to kind of meet him halfway. That's what that says to me. I need to figure out what I need to do so that when these opportunities, these little things do present themselves, we're set up for success, not, just constantly looking for someone to take care of my problems, if that makes sense.
Perfect. I think that's wonderfully articulated. What I wrote some notes as you were sharing your stories. What it sounds like is you're putting your faith into action. And even though you said it's not perfect, maybe in the imperfection, that's where you found the perfection. Because I wrote down, you had perfect timing, you had perfect peace, you had perfect guidance, you had perfect leadership. And the reason why is because you went to perfection for that leadership, and then everything was perfectly orchestrated. It laid out. So the word I got was, out of all of that, out of the imperfection was perfection, and out of fear was faith, and then action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to just sit there and, like you say, if you it's with anything in life, just sitting and hoping that something's gonna happen. Like you have to take that action and just keep moving on every day. And even though sometimes you don't feel like you're going the right direction, if you just keep try to keep moving forward, that's when things start happening. I feel like that's what's made us successful for sure, because we have friends who have not done that. They keep hoping that it's going to happen. It's just going to happen for them. And it's like, you guys got to just like, you got to work action wise. Like, you got to keep moving forward every day. So.
Yeah, no, there's this quote. I think it's Tony Robbins' quote. Correct me if I'm wrong, Rusty. He says, knowledge is not power. The application of knowledge is power. And with a lot of the stuff I've read, they talk about, some people cripple themselves looking for the perfect moment, opportunity, or plan. And it's like, nah, you just need to start moving. You need to start taking actionable steps. And if you make a mistake along the way, recognize it and adjust. And then that's you perfecting your plan.
Yeah.
Because, I would say, like, we've been blessed to be very successful in what we do at this point in our lives. But, even though, like Rusty was saying, oh, you guys were voted #1 this or this and that, or a lot of positive reviews and things. And we're humble enough and realistic enough. Like, do I think we're the best? No. But do I think that we've taken all the steps to put ourselves in that position? Absolutely. There's other people out there that might be more talented, might be smarter, might have better connections, but they're not putting in the hustle. So I think part of it just comes down to hard work.
Well, the two questions for sure is, do you have a go-to statement or technique to overcome anger? It looks like they don't have any anger, but they did mention that they sometimes.
We're both angry sometimes.
Right. Do you have a go-to statement or technique to overcome anger?
Just honestly, just taking a deep breath and remember that this will pass. This will pass. It won't be forever like this. When I get angry, or just looking inner why am I angry? Usually it's because I'm tired or stressed. Those are usually the reasons, or I'm scared of something. That's why I get angry. So
yeah, I know when it comes to anger, like personal anger, right? Like, we're angry between each other, or like just stuff in our personal lives. We're comfortable. I mean, we're very open in our relationship, and that we communicate these things. Like, we don't just sweep it under the rug. I would say most of the time if I'm angry or about something Jenny said or did, I'll bring it up. Or if she's angry about something I said or did, she'll bring it up. We don't just like give each other the silent treatment for days or anything. So,
or wait till it explodes.
Handling it in our professional lives, I guess we take a more clinical approach, just from like my background as a counselor and just like, all the stuff we read. Because it's easy to apply stuff when you're looking at it, like you give somebody else the advice, or it's in this situation. But when it's between yourselves, it's always a lot harder. That's why counselors get counselors, or that's why lawyers get lawyers. It's hard to do that without removing the emotion from it. But when we're doing it more from a business standpoint, we always try to be solution focused. Like, all right, what's the solution here? Whether it's dealing with my anger, or dealing with like maybe a client who has some questions about something, or just managing time, because our time gets split all the time. So dividing and conquering. Yeah.
Thank you. That's beautiful. What about the pandemic? Do you have either a story you'd like to share? I think this is my last one. A story you'd like to share where you've overcome fear, where you're like, oh, this really, this kind of explains how I overcome fear, or the importance of staying connected. That seems like it's very important for you, or anything that you'd like to talk about before we end the podcast.
Do you want to start?
You can.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I'm going to be completely honest. We do a little weekly on our Instagram and Facebook. We do a weekly video called Wedding Tip Tuesday for our wedding clients. Just we create short little snippets of content. Just most of them are little unique tips that most people wouldn't think of for their wedding day. And we just try to give them as much content as possible so that they can plan effectively. And about 4 weeks ago, we made a video where we were actually joking, like, about, everybody freaking out about COVID-19, and
we're like, sorry, we're gonna have to cancel your weddings.
Yeah,
and then we're joking, but we're like, we know.
1 week later, the joke's on us. So,
yeah, we've had a lot of cancellations and rescheduling. So
yeah, so we've had, I think,
like 14 reschedules and 3 cancellations, and that's just right now and we don't know what's gonna happen.
So I would say our fear right now, fear that we're currently dealing with COVID-19 is, Jenny and I have been in a place where in the last few years we've been tirelessly paying off debt. So we don't have a lot of monthly outgoing, expenses right now, which is great. And I'm glad we've done that. But we just really started saving hardcore the last 6 months. And so we were prepared for, a few months of if something like, what we call an oh crap situation ever happened. But then it finally gets here and you're like, oh, we actually have to do this. We may have to tap into savings, or we may have to sell some stuff, or we may have to restructure how we brand, or, do some different stuff in order to stay afloat. And so
I think it's the fear of the unknown.
The fear of the unknown.
Like what we don't know, like so much about this and where it's going to go or how long it's going to be. And that's where I think we're at, the fear of the unknown, because we know right now we're fine. And we will be fine for a few months, but what if it affects us next year, all the way into next year with bookings and things like that? So fear of the unknown and having that.
I think when those initial reports came out and a lot of the new stuff from the CDC and just politics and stuff, we had seen it seemed like the end of the first week of May or the beginning of the second week of May was kind of what they were saying. And initially we were like, all right, so we tried to mentally prepare ourselves for, all right, April through May is going to be shot. We got to figure this out. But, up in Virginia, they're putting, all these things in place until like mid-June. So it's like, gosh. Right. And, we're just going to have to figure it out as we go. That's all we can do.
Do you want to share steps on how you believe that you're going to overcome the fear?
Yeah, I mean, I know I've been praying about it every night. I know for one, that's what I've been doing.
Same.
I pray about it every night, just not just, the fear part of it, but like just taking care of it, keeping people healthy, and, just knowing that we'll be okay. The fear part too that I've been trying to do is take action steps on, like, to be honest, like, I'm applying for like the emergency loans and things like that, just to have as like, if I need it. So making plans still, like planning to have to, like things going wrong, but they don't have to, but at least having that preparation, like we've both been discussing that, like, what if this happens, like knowing what situation, like if this situation occurs, what are we going to do? So having action plans in place, just in case. But it doesn't mean like we're gonna do it. We're actually trying not to do those things, but they are there for safety net. So that helps us relieve some fear, because then we know at least we have this plan in place to where we can utilize this if needed, to where instead of just waiting to the last minute and then not knowing what to do. I don't know. That's my outlook on it.
Yeah, and gosh, I mean, this whole concept, like just with everything going on, sort of been consuming our lives and our businesses for the last 3 to 4 weeks, like pretty hardcore. So one of the things we've done is, so I'll preface this by saying, I feel like the last book or two I've read about like personal development, success, and, managing businesses and things like that, they talk about how when a recession happens, or like sort of a lull in the economy, or just these big things happen, right? There are businesses that ultimately suffer, and some of them never bounce back, and some of them go out of business, and some people, like, they go back to work, and a lot of things can happen. And one of the things they said, again, always the silver lining, is that some businesses find a way to take advantage of a time like this and actually thrive and come back stronger. And so I don't necessarily know what all those steps are for all those different businesses and all those different walks of life, but I know we're trying right now to not focus on, oh my God, what's going to happen, but hey, let's look at the way our situation is right now, and let's try to adapt to the market, and let's try to do more right now to serve others and to meet others where they're at. Because, that might mean price shifts, that might mean offering packages differently, that might be sort of adjusting how we do what we do. Can't really do a client consult right now and meet with them, but we can do Zoom meetings and things like that and FaceTime. So, we've done a lot more adjusting of things like that too, which I think is going to help.
I appreciate you sharing that. That's great tips. I think that's very special. You guys have just shared your intentions, and your intentions at first, your goal is you want to connect with the family on a very sincere level. And so you're beginning each step with intention to serve them. So I think that's fantastic. And thank you for sharing. I don't have any other questions except I'd like to say thank you. You're a beautiful couple. I love your heart. Thank you for inviting us into your home. How can the public find Jennifer and Joe Mackey?
We are on Facebook, Instagram, and the internet. So we are at JCM Photography Asheville. So just just JCM Photography Asheville on Facebook and Instagram.
And then our website is your jcmphotography.com. And most people find us that way through Google. But those are our three main platforms.
And if you want to follow our other company, Balsam Mountain Photography is our other one, and they're Balsam Mountain Photography on Instagram and Facebook, and the website is too.
Yeah.
You want to spell that for us, Jen? Balsam? Can you spell that?
Balsam. B as in boy, and all ALSAM. So Balsam Mountain Photography, and they can find them on the same platforms.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Conquering Mountains. If you enjoyed this episode and you found it transforming, leave us a short message on the platform you listen to us on and give us a thumbs up. And if you really got something of value, share it with a friend. Our goal here is to help you transform so you can overcome the obstacles that prevent the possibilities.